Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the problem with music streaming services. And yes, my voice sounds a lot different than it normally does, and that's because I'm sick, so I'm sorry about that. But anyways, I don't even think the biggest problem with music streaming services is that you can't own the music, which yeah, that sucks. And the fact that any album can just be taken off at any time when the record label feels like it is like really annoying. However, and that's why I do recommend like CDs, because I have a bunch of CDs because you actually get to keep the album that you paid for, and while you do, pay a lot of money, and that especially does add up over time compared to a streaming service where you get to listen to a buck ton of albums for a pretty decently cheap monthly subscription, depending on, which streaming service you go with. It still, again, sucks that you can't actually own the music, but again, I don't even think that's the biggest problem with music streaming services, honestly. I think the two biggest issues I have is one, just straight up, a lot of albums being only available on like certain music streaming services. And what do I mean by this? Big example, The Pillows, which is a pretty decently popular Japanese band. They made the FLCL soundtrack. If you've watched that anime before, I haven't watched it yet, but although I will get to watching it, so don't worry about that. But anyway, The Pillows. I want to listen to their entire discography. And for anybody who has listened to a lot of Pillows albums, you probably already know that their Avex era, where they signed to the Avex record label, wasn't all that great, but I still want to listen to their entire discography. However, I cannot do that on any streaming platform besides, for some reason, Apple Music. And that's a big shame because, again, I just want to listen to their entire discography. But not only that, I just listened to Trial, a pretty underrated album from that Avex era, and it is very, very good. But again, I can't listen to it on any streaming service, not Tidal, not Amazon Music, not any of the music streaming services I've tried. I can only listen to it on Apple Music, which is, again, incredibly annoying. But it's not only that. Another Japanese musician, another pretty popular for another soundtrack for Berserk 1997, Susumu Hirasawa. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but let's just go with it. You can't listen to his actual studio albums like his big ones. I mean, like Technique of Relief and Siren. You cannot listen to those on any streaming platform for besides, again, for some reason, another just one streaming service, which is Deezer, which is, again, strange, but it's just annoying. Like that's just the big problem that I have with it. It's just some albums, especially Japanese albums for Japanese bands, that are only available on certain music streaming services. That is just really, really annoying. And not only that, the main streaming service I use, which is Tidal, unfortunately, just straight up doesn't have a lot of albums, even from pretty popular bands, which is, again, annoying as hell. So yeah, that's just a huge problem with streaming services. Just certain albums, or hell, even certain artists' entire discography only being available on certain music streaming services. So you have to go fucking tiptoeing around a bunch of music streaming services if you just want to listen to a few albums by an artist, which is, again, for the third time, annoying as hell. But I actually don't even think that's the biggest problem with music streaming services. And that brings me to my next point, which is honestly has more to do with the record labels themselves and re-releases of albums or remasters or remixes, which I don't have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is when they tack on bonus tracks at the end of the album, completely going against the original, like the artist's actual, you know, sequencing, which is just why. And the bigger problem is that they don't provide the original album sequencing. So you're just fucking stuck with having to listen to the entire album, and then you'll just have like 3 or 4 bonus tracks right at the end that you don't really want to listen to because, again, the artist did not put those on the album, but yet they're on this like specific album because the record label just said, "Hey, let's put these like 3 or 4 random fucking singles right at the end." Again, I'm going to bring up this example again. Technique of Relief by Susumu Hirasawa. Again, has 4 fucking bonus tracks at the end. And not only that, it would be like okay, sort of, if they were different tracks. Although, again, even that still sucks because you're still not listening to the original sequencing that the album was originally supposed to be in. But It's four versions of the exact same song, and I know Berserk Forces is a really, really good track. However, I don't want to listen to it four fucking times at the end of an album. And I know you can just pause the album when it gets to the actual ending track for the original album, but it still sucks that you have to do that for so many albums, especially old ones, where record labels just felt the need for some reason to add three random singles at the end of the album. Another example, Beatles solo career stuff, John Lennon, Plastic Ono Band, the like remixes that came out recently, I do like those, but they just felt the need to again add three singles at the end of the album, which I don't want to listen to because again, they weren't originally supposed to be on the album. And again, it's even worse when they don't provide the original track listing. So if I want to listen to this album or this album, I have to pause it every time it gets to the final track. And again, it's just annoying. Which is another reason why I recommend CDs and also used ones as well, because a lot of the time, used CDs, especially older ones, will have the original track listing on it. It will not have stupid ass bonus tracks, or at least it'll have them on a separate disc. It makes so much more sense to have them on a separate disc entirely, or like a separate album entirely, whatever the hell. But don't tack it on at the end of the album, especially when the final track is most of the time the most important track on an album, besides maybe the opening track as well. But again, it just sucks that a lot of record companies feel the need to put singles or just how even just random ass tracks that were made in the era that the album was released right at the end. It just kind of sours the mood for me. And again, I know for the 10th time you can pause it, but it's still annoying. Especially when, some albums don't have random ass bonus tracks and then other albums do. So you have to go looking through the entire track list for like every single album you add. It's annoying. But that's basically it. I don't have a whole lot else to say, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.